He was a really nice guy, a family man. Great to be on the training pitch with because he was so fit, and his presence was good. You know, it was good for the team, and I mean, especially the '75 team. I mean, we all got on together, and I mean, he was a valuable.
Some tragedies unfold in a single violent moment. Others arrive quietly, creeping into a life that once seemed golden, admired, secure. Dave Clement's story belongs to the second kind. At first glance, it reads like the journey of a proud English. The defender who built his reputation the hard way, game by game, tackle by tackle, appearance by appearance, but behind the packed stadiums, the crisp white shirts, and the roar of Loftus Road, something far more fragile was unfolding, and when it finally broke, it shocked English football to its core in the 1970s. Dave Clement was everything a manager wanted in a defender: reliable, disciplined, fiercely committed. At Queen's Park Rangers, he became more than just a left back. He became a symbol of consistency in an era of unpredictability. Over 400 appearances for the club, week after week, season after season. While other players chased glamour moves or faded into obscurity, Clement simply kept showing up. He earned an England cap, a proud moment that validated years of hard graft. For supporters, he was dependable steel on the flank. For teammates, he was part of the heartbeat of the dressing room. But football careers, no matter how solid, are balanced on a knife's edge. By 1981, Clement was playing for Fulham. He was still respected, still competitive, still proud. Then came the moment that would fracture everything, literally and emotionally. A horrific leg break, the kind of injury players fear in the quiet corners of their minds but never truly believe will happen to them. It wasn't just pain. It wasn't just surgery. Doctors reportedly warned that his career might be over. For a man whose identity had been forged entirely through football, that possibility was catastrophic. When athletes suffer career-ending injuries, the public sees the cast, the crutches, the hospital photos. What they don't see is the silence, the sudden absence of routine, the locker room laughter that vanishes overnight, the camaraderie that once defined daily life. For Clement, that void became unbearable. Teammates moved on, much as continued. Crowds still filled stadiums, but he was no longer part of it. The physical wound began to heal, the psychological one did not. In the months that followed, Clement reportedly slipped into a deep depression. The loss of football felt like the loss of self. He struggled with fear and anxiety, including an intense belief that he was suffering from cancer. That fear consumed him. Tragically, after his death, an autopsy would confirm he did not have the disease he feared, but by then the damage inside his mind had already taken hold. On March 31st, 1982, at just 34 years old, Dave Clement took his own life at his father-in-law's flat in Battersea. The method was self-inflicted wounds combined with poisoning. The news reverberated across English football. A strong, battle-tested defender, a man who had faced down strikers across the country without hesitation. Gone. For many fans, it wasn't comprehensible. How could someone so tough on the pitch be so vulnerable off it? But that question misunderstands something essential about mental health. Strength in one arena does not guarantee resilience in another. The very traits that made Clement relentless as a defender, discipline, internalized pressure, self-demand, may have intensified his suffering when the game was taken away. His death forced uncomfortable conversations in an era when mental health was rarely discussed, especially among professional athletes. In the early 1980s, depression carried stigma. Therapy was not openly embraced. Footballers were expected to get on with it. Injury meant recovery or retirement, not psychological collapse. Clement's tragedy exposed how thin that illusion of toughness could be. But the story did not end with him. His son, Paul Clement, was just 10 years old when his father died, a child trying to understand a loss too complex for any adult, let alone a boy. Paul would grow up to build his own respected career in football management and coaching, working with elite clubs and national teams. Yet the shadow of that early trauma inevitably lingered. The loss of a parent to suicide does not simply fade with time. It becomes part of the emotional architecture of a life. Decades later, tragedy brushed the Clement family again. In 2013, Paul Clement's close friend and colleague, Nick Broad, was killed in a car accident while waiting for roadside assistance. Paul reportedly witnessed the aftermath and had to make the call for help. For someone who had already experienced sudden loss in childhood, the event reopened old wounds. Grief does not repeat itself the same way twice, but it echoes. The name Dave Clement has also surfaced in other unrelated tragedies over the years, creating confusion in headlines and online searches. In 2012, a 22-year-old David Clement went missing while jogging in El Dorado County, California. After a month-long search, authorities ruled the death a suicide. In 2015, in Wagga Wagga, Australia, David John Clements killed his 80 father and was later found not guilty of murder by reason of mental illness. These separate stories share only a name, yet they underline something haunting: how Often mental health crises sit at the center of modern tragedy, but the Dave Clement remembered by football fans is the defender who wore QPR's colors with pride. The man who played through pain long before sports science offered sophisticated support systems. The professional who made over 400 appearances not because he chased headlines, but because he delivered consistency. His era was different. Contracts were smaller. Player welfare systems were minimal. There were no mandatory counseling services, no social media statements addressing mental strain, no structured exit programs preparing players for life after retirement. When the final whistle blew on a career back then, many were left to navigate the silence alone in Clement's case. That silence proved fatal. There is a brutal irony in the fact that defenders are trained to anticipate danger, to read threats before they materialize, yet the greatest threat to his life came from within a battle invisible to fans and, perhaps, even to those closest to him. His fear of illness, later proven unfounded, shows how powerful unchecked anxiety can become. When the mind convinces itself of catastrophe, evidence often struggles to break through today. Professional football speaks more openly about depression and psychological well-being. Clubs employ mental health specialists. Former players share their struggles publicly. Campaigns encourage athletes to seek help without shame. While it would be simplistic to say these advancements exist because of Dave Clement, stories like his undeniably form part of the painful history that forced change at Queen's Park Rangers. Supporters still remember him not for how he died, but for how he played. A dependable left-back with sharp positioning and tireless work rate. A defender who rarely sought the spotlight but earned respect through reliability. His legacy on the pitch remains intact, even as his personal story carries a weight of sorrow. When fans discuss the tragedy of Dave Clement, they often speak in hushed tones, not because his career lacked achievement, but because it ended in a way that forces uncomfortable reflection. It reminds us that sporting success does not immunize anyone against mental anguish, that applause cannot cure isolation, that strength is not the same as invulnerability. He was 34 years old, an age when many footballers today are transitioning into coaching, media, or mentoring roles, an age when life should still be expanding, not closing in. And yet for Clement, the injury in 1981 created a psychological fracture deeper than any bone in many ways. His story asks a question that still echoes across professional sport. What happens to the warrior when the war ends? When the stadium lights dim and the chants fade, what remains? Identity built on performance can crumble when performance is no longer possible. Dave Clement's life stands as both tribute and warning. Tribute to a player who gave his all to the clubs he represented. Warning about the unseen battles that can follow sudden career loss. Football remembers his tackles, his caps, his loyalty. History also remembers the cost. And perhaps that dual memory of resilience and fragility, intertwined, is the most honest way to honor him.